All right. I was just we talked about Liberia, the created by American Colonization Society, and Monrovia, and all those little interesting tidbits, and these Western countries being formulated, some of them out of the so-called, well, out of the anti-slavery movement, but wasn't more kind of thing. And we're going to even address that a little bit more later. So let's talk about Zanzibar. You saw the video, or you should have watched the My History Lab link. It was an island that emerged as a main center of slave trade. It's actually in the east part, not the west, though. We need to make that more clear. It was an Omani trading post since the late 1600s. It became so wealthy that the Sultan of Oman moved his headquarters there in 1828. And here you look at the ivory. Sadly, what is that? That's elephant tusks, right? So there was huge exports of rhinoceros and elephant husks. And again, though, we look to this under pressure from Britain officially ending slave trade in 1857. And so did Britain want to do this so as to help Africans? Well, I'm going to show you a map a little bit later, and then again, I think about this. So just briefly to mention the Zulu Kingdom, when I was a young boy, there was a long series on the TV that came out on Shaka Zulu. I was so fascinated by it, and I have no idea at this point just how accurate it was or not, but I think it was a very interesting TV series, kind of like a historical rendition. It was attempting to tell the story of the Zulus and Shaka Zulu and how the Zulu nation emerged. So, anyways, in the early 1800s, southeastern African Zulu emerge, and Shaka was a pivotal character who transformed the way war was fought in Africa. Impressive, but sadly very violent. He increased the deadliness of warfare, and actually anybody who's going to be a good warrior is going to be famed for their ability to kill more as opposed to kill less. Am I right? He did help unify Zulu people, and he expanded the Zulu Empire, and they became a real obstacle for the British. Now, here's what I was, this map, I just kind of wanted you to reflect upon what I was talking about earlier. The age of imperialism in Africa. Between 1880 to 1914, Europeans brought most of Africa under their control. So think about this. The anti-slavery movement within Europe coincides with the springboarding of European intervention and lockdown of African peoples and states. So again, I go to this question about this idea of human rights being invoked in the name of foreign policy interventionism by European and American governments. I want to bring this up again because it's really important, right? Because the issue of whether or not, think about even just recently with, in Serbia, when Clinton was president, he used NATO, and NATO participated. European nations seemed to think it was fine. The Republicans at the time didn't, maybe because it was just Bill Clinton, but or many didn't use NATO to invade and bomb Serbia because of the way Serbians were treating Serbians. Now, NATO wasn't set up for that. So that was the first time NATO was used not to prevent NATO members from being attacked by another member, but to actually intervene in the internal affairs of another nation based on what premises did that they have that authority. NATO was led by the U.S. with Obama into Libya under a violent civil war going on to overthrow Gaddafi. We participated in that in the name of human rights. But simultaneously, right while we were doing that, in Bahrain, which is a small country you may not have heard of, the central government was killing unarmed protesters and even killing and arresting and torturing the doctors that were attending to them. What makes this interesting is that we have a large navy there in Bahrain. And Saudi Arabian troops were even sent in to help squash an unarmed, peaceful uprising of Bahraini citizens in Bahrain, while we simultaneously were bombing and getting involved in Libya to help armed uprising, a violent protest against the central government in the name of human rights. So we rather are completely inconsistent or on this, or there's other factors as to why we really would want to get involved in Libya. And again, this is what a historian has to think about. And I'm trying to pitch this for you outside of just being political, to be one of those good old-fashioned, leftist professors who are trying to indoctrinate anti-Americanism into the youth, or older students. No, but this is worth bringing up, right? Because look at what we see here on the map in context of what we just saw. I think it's good to think about those things. So how was colonization and control done? One, industrialization. Britain was small. This is what's really wild. You never really think about. Look at Africa, it's so big. And you see the British Isles, small. Okay, Japan island, the island of Japan, small. And then these smaller nations are able to dominate over so many other peoples. Industrialization really makes a difference, right? The weapons used, okay? Modern weaponry really total. I mean, you look at this picture of this guy here. I don't care how many people you have with spears. You're going down, man, as long as he's got those bullets full, right? That's it. Now, medical developments example also. In the 1800s, there was a way to prevent malaria, gin and tonic, right? And the prevention of malaria meant that less colonizers would die and you can survive better and, maintain control as well. So there was different factors there, such as that. Now, we're going to move to Egypt. I'm actually going to stop here, move into the next lecture, and focus more on Egypt and Belgium, and then we'll be done.